It's kind of wild, isn't it? Just since 2022, AI has exploded, adding trillions in market value.
It really has.
But, beyond all the cool apps and headlines, there's this fundamental connection we need to talk about energy. Where does all that AI power actually come from?
Right. And it's not just a one-way street, which is what's so fascinating. Yes, AI uses a ton of energy, but it also has this huge potential to completely change how we do energy. Production, distribution, consumption, all of it.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, that's what we're zeroing in on, this interplay, this back and forth between energy and AI.
Yeah.
We're using the latest analysis from the International Energy Agency, the IEA, as our main guide here.
Yeah, it's a solid report.
Think of it as getting everyone up to speed on this really crucial intersection.
And if we zoom out just a bit, our goal here is sort of twofold, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
First, we really need to get our heads around just how much energy this whole AI boom actually demands. It's significant. And second, we want to explore the ways AI itself can be, well, a pretty powerful tool to transform the energy sector, make it more efficient, spark innovation. Some of this might be surprising.
And the IEA, they've really dug deep, haven't they? Pulled together stuff from industry reports, academic studies, expert consultations.
Yeah, it's comprehensive. They've synthesized a lot of different viewpoints.
So we're getting a pretty good picture. Our mission, really, for you listening, is to get past the surface level news,
Right,
and really grasp the implications here. We've even got some pretty eye-opening facts coming up, like comparing the electricity use of one of these big AI data centers to, say, households.
That comparison really hits home.
Yeah. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with the big one. AI's energy appetite, the sheer scale of it.
It's the foundation, really. There's no AI without energy. Simple as that. Primarily electricity, powering those massive data centers where all the computation happens.
And these data centers, they're not just growing, they're exploding, right? The report says global investment almost doubled since 2022.
Doubled, yeah. Hitting $500 billion this year, 2024.
$500 billion?
Yeah.
That's a massive bet on AI continuing to expand, and all that hardware needs juice.
Exactly. And if you look at the current numbers for 2024, data centers are already consuming about 1.5% of all global electricity.
1.5%.
Yeah.
How much is that in real terms?
It's around 415 terawatt hours, TWH.
Okay.
And while 1.5% might not sound huge overall, it can have a really big impact locally.
Right, because they're concentrated.
Precisely. The U.S. is the biggest user right now, about 45% of that global total.
45%.
Yep. Then China's around 25%, Europe about 15%.
But the key thing is the growth rate, isn't it? It's climbing fast.
Oh, incredibly fast. Since 2017, data center electricity use has been growing about 12% per year.
12%. Compare that to overall electricity growth.
It's 4 times faster, 4 times the growth rate of total electricity consumption across the whole economy.
Wow. Okay, that puts it in perspective.
And think about the size of these places. The report gives this really vivid comparison.
Yeah.
A typical AI-focused data center, it can use as much electricity as 100,000 homes.
100,000 for one data center.
Yep. And some of the really big ones they're building now, they're projected to use 20 times that amount.
20 times. So 2 million homes worth of power for one facility.
Potentially, yeah. It's like building a small city, power-wise.
It reframes everything. And you mentioned concentration. They aren't spread out evenly, are they?
Not at all. The IEA points out, in the U.S., nearly half the data center capacity is packed into just 5 regional clusters.
5 clusters holding half the capacity. That must put immense strain on the local grids there.
Exactly. That's a key point. These concentrated local impacts, we're likely going to see more and more of that as AI keeps growing. But, the energy story isn't just about these huge buildings full of servers.
Right, there's more to it.
We also need to think about the energy used across the whole life cycle of an AI model.
Okay, so let's walk through that. What are the stages? There's making the hardware.
Yep. Manufacturing.
Then training the model, which sounds like it takes a lot of power.
They're very energy intensive, yeah.
And then actually using the model, running it day to day. Inference, is that the term?
Inference, exactly. Manufacturing, training, inference, that's the basic flow.
Got it.
And each stage has its own energy footprint. Let's start with manufacturing, making the specialized chips. GPUs, TPUs, all those acronyms.
The brains of the operation.
Right. Producing those is incredibly energy intensive.
How intensive are we talking? I saw a number in the report.
Yeah, the example for a cutting-edge 3-nanometer chip wafer. Just one wafer. It takes about 2.3 megawatt hours to manufacture.
2.3 megawatt hours for one wafer that makes tiny chips? That's a lot.
It is. And, while making them takes significant energy, it's actually the using them part that dominates over the lifetime.
Really? So operating energy is bigger than manufacturing energy?
By quite a bit, yeah. For a typical high-performance server, maybe 10 milliwatt each for manufacturing.
Okay.
But over 5 years of running it, easily over 80 milliwatt each.
80, wow. So most of the energy hit comes from actually running the AI?
The vast majority, yes. But let's not skip over manufacturing too quickly. Why does it take so much power?
Yeah, what's going on there?
Well, it's the incredible precision needed. The report says about 60% of the manufacturing energy goes into making the actual silicon wafers and semiconductors.
The really technical stuff.
Exactly. Deposition, lithography,
Okay.
etching. These are super delicate, power-hungry steps.
And the other 40%?
That's for all the essential support stuff.
Yeah.
Purifying huge amounts of water, which is critical.
Right.
And keeping those manufacturing environments, the clean rooms, incredibly stable and cool. That takes a lot of energy, too.
Okay, that makes sense. So manufacturing is step one. Then comes training. This is where the AI learns from all that data, right?
Yep. And feeding it massive data sets and getting it to learn patterns, that takes a huge amount of computation.
So lots of energy. Does vary a lot.
Oh, enormously. Depends completely on how big and complex the model is. We don't have exact numbers for every model, obviously.
Sure.
But the IEA looked at estimates based on the compute power used for the big models developed since 2020, using data from EPAC AI.
And the trend there is just upwards sharply.
Astronomical, basically. The report mentions that the computing power used to train the biggest state-of-the-art models has grown something like 350,000 times since 2014.
350,000 times. That's not just growth. That's a bit an explosion.
It really is. Unbelievable scaling.
Okay, so massive energy for manufacturing, even more for training these giant models. What about the last stage? Inference. Using the trained model.
Right. This is when the AI is actually doing its job, answering questions, generating images, whatever it's designed for.
How does the energy use compare here? Is it less than training, usually?
It can be, but it really depends. Several things factor in.
Like what?
Well, the design of the model itself, obviously. Some are just more efficient than others.
Okay. Also, whether the model uses techniques that make it sort of think harder during inference, more computation per query.
Oh, right.
Critically, the hardware it runs on. Newer chips, like the latest B200 GPUs, they're getting much better at calculations per watt, more energy efficient.
So hardware improvements are helping manage the load.
Definitely. That's a key part of the story. But it's not just hardware.
Software, too.
Yeah. Clever software optimizations are making a big difference. Things like batching requests together so the processors work more efficiently.
Okay.
And smarter ways to manage memory key value caches, attention mechanisms like flash attention.
Yeah.
Basically reducing how often the system has to fetch data, which saves energy.
It's fascinating, this constant push on both hardware and software to keep up, or at least manage the energy side.
Absolutely. Innovation is crucial.
And the report even shows, specific examples for text generation, right?
Yeah.
How different models use different amounts of electricity.
Yeah, that really highlights the range. You've got these tiny language models like SmolM2.
Small m. Yeah, small m2. It uses relatively little GPU power compared to, say, a big mixture of experts model like Mixtral,
Okay.
or these really complex reasoning models like DeepSeek-R1. The difference in energy per task can be huge.
So the choice of model and what you're asking it to do, that really matters for energy use.
Absolutely. It underscores that it's not just one monolithic AI energy cost. It's very dependent on the specifics.
Okay, so that's the picture now. What about the future? What are the projections for data center electricity use going forward?
Well, the IEA's main forecast, their base case, projects that by 2030, global data center electricity use will hit around 945 terawatt hours.
945 TWh. How does that compare to today's number, the 415?
It's more than double, over twice as much electricity in just 6 years.
Wow. And as a percentage of total global electricity?
That would be just under 3%. So still a relatively small slice overall, but like we said, a slice that's growing incredibly fast.
So doubling by 2030. That implies an average growth rate of, what, like 15% per year between now and then?
Roughly, yeah. Which is way faster than the expected growth in electricity demand from everything else combined.
What's driving that massive increase in the projections?
It's mainly two things, according to the report. First, just more servers being deployed everywhere.
Okay.
And second, those servers, especially the ones built for AI, the accelerated servers, They just use more power individually. They're packed with those energy-hungry GPUs and TPUs.
Got it. More servers and hungrier servers.
Pretty much.
And the IEA has another scenario too, right? A higher growth one.
They do, yeah. They call it the liftoff case.
Liftoff, okay. What's that based on?
That basically explores what happens if AI adoption really takes off even faster and demand for digital services surges globally.
So even more data centers, even quicker deployment.
Exactly. Which naturally would mean even higher electricity demand than the base case projection.
Just a good reminder, these are projections, not destiny. But it highlights the potential scale. Though the report also mentions a possible snag, right? Connecting these things to the grid.
Ah, yes. The infrastructure question. This is really critical.
What's the issue?
The IEA estimates that maybe 20%, one-fifth of the data center capacity planned globally between now and 2030 could face delays just getting hooked up to the power grid.
20% delayed. Why? Grid limitations.
Yeah, limitations in the existing grid infrastructure, but also just long waits for the necessary equipment.
Like what kind of equipment?
Big stuff. Large power transformers, they're actually manufacturing backlogs for those right now.
Really?
Yeah, and building new high-voltage transmission lines. That just takes years. Permitting, construction, it's a slow process.
So you could have the data center built, ready to go, but it can't get enough power.
That's the risk. It's a potential bottleneck that could definitely slow down how quickly new AI services get rolled out.
Okay, so that's a pretty sobering look at the demand side. Huge growth, potential bottlenecks. But now let's flip the coin.
Right.
How can AI actually help the energy sector? This is where it gets potentially quite exciting, isn't it?
I think so, yeah, because our energy systems are getting incredibly complex, right? More electrification, more digital stuff, more decentralized renewables.
Solar panels on roofs, wind farms all over.
Yeah, and that puts pressure on costs, on emissions, on reliability, on safety.
Mm-hmm.
And this increasing complexity is exactly where AI's ability to analyze data, find patterns, and optimize things could be incredibly valuable.
Like bringing order to the chaos almost.
In a way, yeah, helping manage it all more effectively. The report dives into specifics across different energy areas.
Let's start with one that might seem counterintuitive. Oil and gas. They're early AI adopters.
Surprisingly, yes, they've actually been using AI for a while now to optimize operations.
How so?
Well, in exploration, AI can analyze huge amounts of geological data, like seismic surveys,
Right.
to get a much better estimate of potential resources before they drill, reduce uncertainty. The report mentions AI improving the classification of geological features from seismic data by up to 90%.
90% better classification.
Yeah.
That's huge for exploration.
Yeah. It is. And it's not just finding stuff, it's also optimizing the production process itself.
Making it more efficient.
More efficient, automating certain tasks, detecting leaks in pipelines much faster.
Ah, important for safety and environment.
Definitely. Also, predictive maintenance, figuring out when equipment might fail before it does, avoiding costly shutdowns, and even helping cut methane emissions.
Methane's a big focus now.
Huge. And AI can help pinpoint and manage those leaks. ExxonMobil even used AI for demand forecasting, apparently cut errors by 25%.
Interesting. Okay. Beyond fossil fuels, what about critical minerals? The stuff we need for batteries, turbines, all that clean tech.
Yeah, securing those supply chains is vital for the transition. And AI is starting to play a big role in exploration there, too.
How? Similar to oil and gas.
Sort of, yeah. Analyzing vast data sets of old geological surveys, drill logs, satellite imagery. Companies like Cobalt Metals are using machine learning on this legacy data to pinpoint promising areas for deposits, like at their Mingomba project. It makes the exploration drilling much more targeted and efficient, less guesswork.
So finding those needed minerals faster and cheaper, potentially.
That's the goal. It could really help accelerate the supply side of the energy transition.
Okay, what about the grid itself? The power lines, the distribution systems. You said complexity is increasing.
Massively, especially with all the variable renewables coming online. Solar and wind aren't constant, right?
Right, depends on the weather.
Exactly. So balancing the grid becomes way harder. AI can be indispensable here.
How? Better forecasting.
Significantly better forecasting, yeah. Predicting both demand and supply from renewables much more accurately.
And that helps how?
Well, if you know how much solar or wind you'll likely have, you can integrate it better. You reduce curtailment.
Curtailment, meaning?
Meaning having to turn off wind turbines or solar panels because there's too much power and nowhere for it to go.
Wasted clean energy.
Exactly. Better forecasting, better integration means Less waste, more optimal use of storage and other power sources.
Makes sense. What else on the grid? Fault detection.
Yeah, that's another big one. AI systems can analyze grid data in real time to detect and pinpoint faults much faster when they happen.
So shorter power outages.
Potentially much shorter. The report suggests maybe 30% to 50% reduction in outage duration in some cases.
Well, that's significant for reliability.
Definitely. And there's another cool application, getting more out of existing power lines.
How does that work?
By using remote sensors and AI to monitor the line's condition in real-time, temperature, sag, wind, etc., you can dynamically adjust how much power they can safely carry.
Instead of just using fixed conservative limits.
Exactly. You operate closer to the true limit based on actual conditions. The IEA thinks this could unlock up to 175 gigawatts of extra capacity on existing lines.
175 GW. Just from smarter operation. How does that compare to, say, the data center demand we talked about?
It's actually more than the projected increase in data center power demand up to 2030 in the base case scenario.
So AI managing the grid could potentially free up more capacity than AI data centers are expected to add in demand.
Potentially, yes. It's a really powerful idea. And grid operators are already using this stuff. RTE in France, Ilia in Belgium. Hitachi Energy has a tool called Nostradamus.
Nostradamus, okay.
So it's happening now.
What about buildings? Heating, cooling, lighting? That's a huge chunk of energy use.
Massive potential there. AI optimizing heating and cooling systems, making them way more efficient, and enabling flexible electricity use.
Flexible use, like using power when it's cheaper or cleaner.
Exactly. Shifting demand based on grid signals. The IEA estimates that scaling up these kinds of AI interventions in buildings globally could save around 300 terawatt hours.
300 kWh. How big is that again?
That's roughly the total annual electricity generation of Australia and New Zealand combined.
Just for making buildings smarter with AI.
Okay.
That's incredible potential savings.
It really is. But there are barriers, of course.
Like what?
Fragmented ownership is a big one. Lots of different landlords and homeowners. And many buildings just lack the digital systems, the sensors, the connectivity needed for full optimization.
So it's harder to implement everywhere.
It is, but even without full smart building setups, AI can still help. For example, just diagnosing faults in HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, air conditioning.
Finding problems early.
Yeah. AI is good at spotting anomalies from even limited sensor data, which can lead to significant savings by fixing issues quickly.
Okay, let's shift to industry. Manufacturing, chemical plants, etc. Another big energy user.
Definitely. And AI is being applied there too, optimizing all sorts of production processes.
What kind of savings are possible?
The IEA estimates maybe 8% energy savings in light industry by 2035 if AI is widely adopted.
3%, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Plus, AI is improving product design with things like generative design, creating digital twins of factories to simulate improvement.
Digital twins, right.
And optimizing how materials are used, reducing waste.
Any examples?
Yeah, the report mentions Gerdo, a Brazilian steelmaker, using AI to cut down on variations in product quality, saving energy and materials. And a German startup, Alchemy.
Alchemy.
Yeah, using AI to reduce the amount of clinker needed in cement production. Clinker is the really energy-intensive part of cement.
Ah, so targeting the biggest energy hogs within a process.
Exactly. Even in industries that are already pretty digitalized, the really energy-intensive ones, AI can still find efficiencies, maybe in the 2% to 6% range.
Which still adds up to significant cost savings for those businesses.
Absolutely. Improves their competitiveness.
Okay, one more sector. Transport. Cars, trucks, planes, ships. Huge reliance on fossil fuels. How can AI help?
Lots of ways, actually. Optimizing traffic flow in cities to cut down on stop-and-go congestion and wasted fuel.
Smart traffic lights, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and better route planning for delivery trucks, for example. Also predictive maintenance for vehicles, keeping them running efficiently.
Autonomous vehicles fit in here too, I guess?
Potentially, yeah, though that's a longer-term thing. But even today, things like reducing contrails from airplanes.
Contrails, the white lines in the sky. How does AI help there?
They actually contribute to warming. AI can analyze weather data to predict where contrails are likely to form, allowing pilots to adjust their altitude slightly to avoid creating them.
Really? Does it work?
Apparently, American Airlines tested this with Google's AI, and they managed to reduce contrails by 54% on the test routes.
54% reduction. That's amazing. Just from slight route changes guided by AI.
Yeah, and overall, the IEA thinks widespread use of these kinds of AI applications in transport could save over 4.5 exajoules of energy by 2035.
Exajoules. How much is that?
It's a huge number, equivalent to the annual energy use of about 120 million cars.
Wow. Okay, so AI isn't just about optimizing what we already do. The report also talks about accelerating innovation itself, right? Creating new energy solutions faster.
This is maybe the most profound impact in the long run. AI as a tool for scientific discovery.
How so?
Helping researchers sift through massive amounts of data, run simulations, identify promising new materials or processes much, much faster than humans could alone.
Speeding up the R&D cycle.
Exactly. The report gives the example from biomedicine AI speeding up protein structure mapping by 45,000 times.
45,000x, that's transformative. And energy innovation often takes decades, doesn't it?
It does. Very long lead times, from lab concept to commercial reality. So anything that can accelerate that process is incredibly valuable for meeting climate goals and staying competitive.
Is the investment flowing into this area, AI specifically, for energy innovation?
That's the catch. The report notes that right now, only about 2% of the total equity raised by energy startups goes to companies with a specific AI focus.
Only 2%?
Yeah.
Despite all this potential?
Seems low, doesn't it? There's clearly room for growth there, but the potential areas are huge. Designing new catalysts, improving battery diagnostics.
Battery diagnostics, like figuring out how long they'll last.
Exactly. Predicting battery cycle life more accurately, forecasting potential failures, optimizing the battery management systems. AI can really help there.
And developing new materials, too.
Yeah, materials for better solar cells or for capturing CO2 more effectively. AI can screen thousands of potential candidates computationally before you even synthesize them in the lab.
So, speeding up discovery.
Right.
But even if AI finds a great new material or battery design faster, scaling it up is still hard, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's a crucial point the report makes. AI can accelerate the front end of innovation, the discovery part,
Right.
but actually building factories, refining manufacturing processes, establishing supply chains for, say, a new battery chemistry or a carbon capture technology, that still involves massive real-world engineering challenges, investment, and time. AI helps, but doesn't solve those scale-up hurdles entirely.
Okay, so putting it all together.
Mm-hmm.
The massive energy demand on one side, the huge potential for optimization and innovation on the other. How does this balance out for climate change? That's the big question, isn't it?
It really is. And the report tackles that head on. There are definitely concerns that AI's own energy footprint could worsen climate change.
What do the numbers say? The emissions projections.
Well, the CO2 emissions just from the electricity used by data centers, they're projected to grow from about 180 million tons today
Okay.
to around 300 million tons by 2035 in the base case, and potentially up to 500 million tons in that higher liftoff case.
300 to 500 million tons. How does that compare to total energy emissions?
It's projected to stay relatively small, below 1.5% of total energy sector emissions, but it's a very fast-growing source. We can't ignore that.
Right. But then, the other side of the equation, the potential emissions reductions from AI applications across the whole economy.
That's where the IEA suggests the potential upside is much larger.
How much larger?
They estimate that the widespread adoption of the kinds of AI efficiency measures we've talked about in industry, transport, buildings, grids could cut total energy-related emissions by around 5% in 2035.
So potential reductions of 5% versus AI's own footprint being maybe 1.5%.
That's the rough comparison based on their analysis, yes. So the net potential seems positive.
But there are caveats, right?
Always caveats. The rebound effect is a big one.
Rebound.
Yeah, the idea that if something becomes more efficient and cheaper, we just end up using more of it, offsetting the savings.
Like if AI makes driving cheaper, people might just drive more.
Exactly. So we can't just assume all those potential savings will automatically translate into net reductions.
And the report emphasizes AI isn't a silver bullet.
Absolutely not. It's a powerful tool, but it doesn't replace the need for strong climate policies, investment in clean energy, and behavioral change. Policy is still crucial.
So wrapping up the main points, it's this real duality, isn't it? AI is both a major new energy demand challenge
Definitely.
and potentially a powerful lever for transforming the energy system towards efficiency and sustainability.
That's the core tension. And honestly, the key takeaway for me is that we need much better data and understanding of this link. How AI demand translates to energy use. It's still a bit fuzzy in places.
We need more transparency there.
We do.
The report also mentioned something about companies buying renewable energy directly. PPAs.
Ah, yes. Power purchase agreements. Data centers are becoming huge players in this market.
How so?
They're signing long-term contracts to buy clean energy directly from new solar and wind projects. It provides crucial guaranteed revenue for those projects, helping them get built.
So the demand from data centers is actually helping drive new renewable deployment.
To a significant extent, yes. They account for a big chunk of corporate PPA deals announced recently. It's an important positive feedback loop.
Interesting. What else did the report flag as important? Skills. Government.
Both, yeah. We definitely need more people with AI skills within the energy sector itself to actually develop and deploy these solutions effectively.
Building that talent pipeline.
Right. And government strategies are key to supporting AI research, helping with data center siting and grid connections, maybe fostering domestic chip manufacturing.
Yeah.
It all plays a role.
One last thing that caught my eye. Water. We talk a lot about energy, but data centers use a lot of water too.
That's a really important, often overlooked point.
Yeah.
Yes, huge amounts of water, both directly for cooling the servers.
Right, evaporation, cooling, and such.
And indirectly.
Yeah.
Water is used in semiconductor manufacturing, and a lot of electricity generation itself requires water for cooling power plants.
So as data center energy use goes up, their water footprint goes up too.
Pretty much proportionally, yeah. It's another resource constraint to consider, especially in water-stressed regions. Adds another layer to the sustainability puzzle.
Okay, so as we finish up here, it leaves us with this big kind of fundamental question, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We have this incredibly powerful technology, AI, with immense potential. But it also comes with significant energy and resource demands.
Right.
How do we actually navigate this? How do we harness the good parts, the efficiency gains, the innovation acceleration, while managing the footprint responsibly? How do we strike that balance?
That really is the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? How do we use AI to build that cleaner, more resilient energy future without letting its own demands undermine those goals? Something to really think about.
Definitely food for thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into energy and AI. It's a complex but absolutely critical area.
It really is.
And if you want to dig even deeper, we strongly recommend checking out the full IEA report, Energy and AI.
Yeah, tons of detail in there, worth a read.
We'd also love to get your feedback or any questions you have on this. Let us know what you think. And be sure to tune in next time for another deep dive.